You just never know what this front office is going to do. And last night, that was going out and getting their guy. I've decided the Grizzlies operate like a 2000s romantic comedy because they fall head over heels in love. And if they are in love, they will run after that person in the rain and get him, as they did with Cedric Coward last night. He was called Colin Coward when he got drafted on the ESPN broadcast, but it is Cedric Coward. He is a Memphis Grizzly. He was acquired from the Grizzlies by the Portland Trail Blazers. They moved up from 16 to 11. They gave up that 16th pick, giving it to Portland. Also a 2028 first rounder and a second rounder. So using two of the first gained in the Desmond Bane trade to Orlando to end up with Cedric Coward here in Memphis. We were live on air for the Grind City Media Draft Show last night, and I think the on-air reaction was pretty indicative of a lot of people in Memphis who also fell in love with Cedric Coward throughout this draft process. When you're going into a draft, there are multiple stages of how you feel. And I think there was a heavy amount of hope that perhaps the Grizzlies would not get younger and be able to use this chamber of assets to trade for a veteran. But then as you start getting closer to the draft, you start really finding yourself having an affinity for certain players. And I think the one player that the majority of people here in Memphis, fans of the Grizzlies, kind of landed on going into the draft was Cedric Coward. And you're watching his tape, you're hearing about his measurables, they're calling him baby Kawhi Leonard, you're listening to his interviews in which he's just like a real standout guy. Like his interviews just kind of make you fall in love with him. He has a great story. It's funny, I even going into last night's draft, just as a little bit of an experiment, I asked ChatGPT who the Grizzlies should draft in the 2025 NBA draft. Do you want to know what their answer was, CJ?
No.
Cedric Coward. So everybody was on board for the Grizzlies potentially taking Cedric Coward, and then they ultimately trade up to get their guy. They wanted a long, versatile, athletic wing who can shoot and who can defend, and Cedric Coward is that. Now, you know me. I am always going to be a sucker for a Pac-12 guy, and now it is back-to-back drafts where the Grizzlies go out and get a player from Washington State, Jalen Wells last year, and now another Washington State product in Cedric Coward. Jalen Wells was a great story last year. Cedric Coward, before we get into the fit and the move and the pick and everything, just in terms of great stories from last night's draft, one of the best stories from last night's NBA draft is Cedric Coward. To go from Willamette, a Division III school in Oregon, and to go from there to playing 2 seasons at Eastern Washington in Cheney, Washington, to then go and play 6 games at Washington State, where his season was cut short because he had season-ending shoulder surgery. But his tape to that point, his skills to that point, so impressive, so promising, that Duke wants him and offers him an NIL deal, and he is set to transfer to Duke before he goes to the NBA Combine and suddenly catches fire, and he's now being foreseen as a first-round pick, and it starts as a late first-round pick, and then as we get closer and closer to the draft, and at this point he's declared for the NBA draft, decided to put his name into that, not go to school, not go to Duke, and he goes from being a late first-rounder to a projected lottery pick to a player that the Grizzlies were so confident in that they trade up to the 11th spot in last night's draft from 16 to take Cedric Coward. Like, to go from Willamette to the number 11 pick in the 2025 NBA draft, those kind of things are not supposed to happen. And then when they do happen, it is one of those examples of what makes sports so cool. I mean, this guy doesn't even have a photo on his Wikipedia page. And now he is an NBA player. He is a member of the Memphis Grizzlies. And what's also cool is if you squint, yeah, he does kind of look like Kawhi Leonard. So we got our reaction live on air, and everyone was pretty excited because I think if you've been watching Grind City Media over the last few days, over the last weeks, there has been a buzz for Cedric Coward here and in Memphis. CJ, you were not on the draft show last night. We missed you.
I was in the chat for a little bit.
We really missed you.
You guys didn't. You guys were crushing it. It was good stuff to watch.
I can always count on you to throw a little sand on the complete hopium that sometimes I get hooked on. Because that's what I am. After a draft, I'm like, this guy's going to be an all-star. He's going to be a major contribution to a Grizzlies team that one day is going to be a contender. Maybe not tomorrow, but someday there's this path forward where Cedric Coward is a part of the very real contending future for the Memphis Grizzlies. What was your reaction to the Grizzlies trading up to take Coward last night?
Hey, if you like a player, don't wait for him to fall till you go up and get him. And this team needs another 3-and-D wing, right? You can't have too many of those. You can't have enough of those. Somebody who can play defense, preferably guard multiple positions as I slow down. Guard multiple positions on the perimeter, and hell, maybe even be able to guard like a small ball 4 from time to time. You can't have enough of those on your roster. We just watched the NBA Finals, and I think combined, when you look at the rosters of the Thunder and of the Indiana Pacers, and we're just looking at 3-and-D type players, I think combined, 9 of those dudes on those rosters who play significant minutes are 3-and-D type of guys, right? So you need that in the NBA. And if you're telling me that you think this is one of those types of players, go out there and get him. He was shooting over 40% from 3 in college. Go out there and get him. Every time he talks about playing defense and playing with the grit. We love people who play with the grit in this city. Immediately when he said that, it's like, oh, okay, that's somebody who's the city's going to embrace immediately. So if that's who you like, go up and get him. Don't wait for him, because anything can happen, and then you could be in a situation taking somebody that you didn't have as highly regarded as him. So yeah, go ahead, knock yourself out. My question initially was, well, if you could trade up to 11, why not move up to 10? It takes 2 people to trade, but why not try and move up to 10 and take what's his name, Malachi, whatever Duke's dude name,
Malawach?
That one. Why not trade up and get
I'd
him?
rather have a 3-and-D wing that, by all means, scout, at least the scouting. And this is how the draft works. You never know how a player is going to ultimately translate
so why get
into
excited?
the NBA.
Why get outrageously over the top excited?
I wouldn't call it outrageously over the top excited. I would call it a healthy amount of excitement coming out of a draft, which I would rather be in a position where you can talk yourself into a player who many scouts viewed as a starting quality NBA player, somebody who is a little bit on the older side. Obviously, the knock is he only played 6 games at Washington State last year. So when you're looking at his shooting numbers, they are elite. Not only, as you mentioned, shooting over 40% from 3, he shot 59% overall from the field in his college career, 72% on 2-point shots. And if you really go down into the nerdy numbers of it all, 69% career true shooting percentage, 66% career effective field goal percentage. When you put Cooper Flagg versus Cedric Coward and you look at these stats, 72% on 2-point shots compared to Cooper Flagg's 52% on 3-point shots, just the same as Cooper Flagg in his college career. Obviously, Cooper Flagg played significantly more games at Duke, but Cedric Coward has played significantly more games overall from Eastern to Washington State, and the measurables are there. And then the measurables too. I mean, I know this time of year is reckless comparison season, like absolute reckless comps being made constantly. But when you look at the measurables of Cedric Coward and somebody like, a Kawhi Leonard, wings with his size have generally had pretty consistent success in the NBA. Kawhi at the combine, 6'6", 7'3" wingspan, standing reach of 8'10", hand width of 11, 227 pounds.
I'm doing my best over here.
Stop it. Coward at the combine, 6'6", 7'2" wingspan, standing reach 8'1",
come on.
hand width 10, 213 pounds.
Come on. The dude played 6 games of high-level college basketball, and he didn't play, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like he played a gauntlet in those 6 games. Let's ease all I ask. I'm not trying to throw sand on the flame of hope, right? Like, I'm not trying to kill your hopium buzz. All I simply ask is that we not do that.
Okay, but why can't you bring up realistic statistical comparison?
That's not a real measurements. Measurements are not the only thing that matters.
Of course, it's not the only thing that matters.
But y'all are talking about him like he's not. The shooting percentage against D3 kids. What are we talking about here?
Enough that John Shire at Duke was ready to give a pretty hefty NIL package for him next year.
Going to play at Duke is different than coming to play in the NBA. Playing at Duke is phenomenal. It's terrific. One of the best college basketball programs in the nation.
I just watched 3 players from Duke get drafted in the top 10 last night.
Absolutely. But we saw those 3 players play at Duke. We saw them play collegiate basketball. We saw them play good college basketball teams. Not trying, again, don't want to.
You're pissing in my Cheerios.
I'm trying to keep it zipped up here. You keep doing things like saying, oh, next Kawhi Leonard. Like, no, I
did not say, I said that there were measurable comparisons to be made. That is not saying he is absolutely 100% going to be the next Kawhi Leonard. Did I ever say that?
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. I let it slide right when we started the show.
They're calling him Baby Kawhi.
That's calling him Kawhi.
That is not calling him Kawhi.
That's calling him Kawhi.
Oh, my God. Okay, well, take that apart and just look at the fact that there is enough for this player that the Grizzlies have identified him to be enough to take the assets that you got in the Desmond Bane trade and take two of them and use them to trade up in the draft to get Cedric Coward. And I did think we got a little bit more of an illumination on the thought of Zach Kleiman in this front office when he spoke last night here at FedEx Forum following the conclusion of the first round of the draft, and particularly when he was asked by Chris Harrington a question on the building around Ja and Jaren and the use of assets on draft night to trade up to take a rookie in Cedric Coward versus the idea of perhaps using those assets to trade for a veteran. Here is a part of that answer from Zach Kleiman's availability last night. Take a listen.
Ja and Jaren are not old. I guess I would start there. I think there's different ways that you can build towards where you're ultimately trying to get to. And I think one of the things that we acknowledged, coming out of this is that you can push in different ways. We insert in closely looking at, all of the avenues that we could pursue. I think we specifically identified Cedric, in this draft as a player that has more upside, at least than a lot of the, names that get thrown around, which are not necessarily available. Most it's easy to throw out names, right? But like it's we see, and we have real belief, in Cedric, and we'll get, kind of more into him. But I think part of the rationale, for making this type of a move is the pursuit of a potential higher end outcome. We could, I intimated this maybe, at the end of the season, but we do feel like we're not just like one guy away from. Are we one guy away from maybe getting a little bit further? Sure, but we for being honest with ourselves, we don't feel like we're one guy away from winning the championship.
And that, I think, sums it up.
The Jessica Benson Show with CJ Hart, live every weekday at 8 a.m.